Okay, so this one we are looking at the next page. You must have gotten through the first table okay, and so we're ready to move on. So this is just another step. It gives you some in a table and some with a word problem. I'll do the first one with you in the table and the first word problem with you, and then let you work on your own at your own pace. So this first one here, again, we have our formula, and you see how you got your final velocity. In this case, it's not written as FS and IS. It's written differently, and that's okay. It means the same thing, your final velocity and your initial velocity. So what we have to look at here is this is stepping us down. It's showing you to calculate your delta V, or your change in velocity. So in this case, I have 26 and 20. So my change in velocity is final minus initial. Okay. And this is not a formula right here necessarily. This is just showing you delta V and your change in temperature. And, not change in temperature, change in velocity, and how you get that. So you get that final minus initial. So 26 minus 20 is 6 meters per second. So that's your change in speed right there. And the time it takes you to do that is 6 seconds. So to get your acceleration, we wrote this formula in our notes too. It's the same thing. So it's our delta V, which is our final speed minus initial speed, which is 6. Okay. 6 meters per second divided by t, which in this case is 6 seconds. So 6 divided by 6 is 1 meter per second, and we can write that as meter per second squared. Okay. Let's look at number 2. We're going to look at the change in velocity. So I'm going from 0 to 12. Actually, I'm going from 12 to 0, but my final velocity minus my initial velocity, so you can see that I'm changing a negative 12 kilometers per second. And this happens in 4 seconds, so this time I've got negative 12 kilometers per second divided by 4 seconds, which is a negative 3 kilometers per second squared. Now you can do 3, 4, and 5 and raise your hand, and I'll come and check those. And then we'll move on to the next section. All right, you must have gotten those 3 right. So we're looking at our next section, which is the word problems. So this is where it comes in handy to write your formula out, define your variables like we did on that chart before. So with a clean sheet of paper, it's always good to have a clean sheet of paper. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the formula. This becomes a little bit harder because now it's giving you a situation. So I have to define what it's telling me. So that's why I define my variables over here. So now let's read the problem. A paperboy rode his bike at 3 meters per second. Okay, that's important. After being chased by a dog for 8 seconds, he was traveling at 6 meters per second. So we're looking for his acceleration. What is his acceleration? So obviously we don't know that. Its final speed that is given to me is going to be one of these. This is a speed, and that's a speed. So this is after he was being chased for 8 seconds. So let's think about that. This is going to be our time. 8 seconds he was chased. So think about it. If he's being chased, his initial speed, he was going 3, and he sped up because he was being chased to 6. So 3 meters per second is my initial speed. 6 meters per second is my final speed. Now I have my variables identified. So now I'm going to plug them in. So I'll end up with 6 meters per second minus 3 meters per second. And remember, he was speeding up, so that should be positive, and it will be. And then the time that it took this to happen was 8 seconds. So now I have to say, okay, well, the acceleration was 6 minus 3 is going to give me 3 meters per second. positive, right, divided by 8 seconds. And so it takes him 8 seconds to do that. So now, in my calculator, I need to place in 3 first, clear it out, make sure it's clear. 3 divided by 8 equals, and I get this decimal, and that's fine. So my acceleration is 0.375 meters per second, or I can write that as 0.375 meters per second squared. Now, what you need to do for these next ones is we need to look at 7, 8, and 9. And you're going to do this exact same way. Write your formula, identify your variables, plug them in, and solve. So do 7, 8, and 9 and raise your hand when you finish. And I will check those, or if you have questions during 7, 8, and 9, raise your hand.